This is Dave Monk, your Prairie Monk, WAFT Champaign 90.1 on your FM dial.
And Dave on the board, and today is June the 18th. It's already the middle of June. The temperature is like July or August, it seems like. And this is the Prairie Monk Show, and this is WEFT's weekly look at the environment and whatever else Dave feels like talking about.
I would like to take you to the Kickapoo Trail. It's in progress, and it's 25 miles in the long run to Danville, to Kickapoo State Park. The first 7 miles is getting near to completion, and eventually it will be open to the public. It's very wide, but that also allows for Olympic style wheelchair people to have a corridor that is not roads, and that's helpful. The width takes out a little of our prairie. So, but it starts at Main Street. Main Street runs into the center of Urbana, and so one of the last stages of construction is to put asphalt on the where roads cross over, and that's where bicycles will have to stop, and it's a little bit more trafficked. So we look at Main Street, and there's the trail has been circled out so that people can get onto Main Street safely. In the distance, you have Walmart on the right-hand side and Aldi's on the left side. And there has been remnant prairie there. There's some trees. We hope that it'll return to nature on either side of the bed. The soil that is there, even the soil under the ballast, is good prairie soil, and that's very rare here because most all the soil is corn and soybeans. Go a little closer, and you'll also notice that this is a junction of 150. The highways always followed, or most always, followed the railroad lines which came first. And so it's very typical for the 150 to be running parallel to the rail trail, which was a railroad bed for Conrail until recently. On the right-hand side, you don't really see it very much because it's been taken over some, but there's an interurban corridor, and that interests us too. I'm going to take you around the corner so that we can view the railroad line from a distance. The trees that are run between Walmart and Cottonwood Road, very obvious. They're partly on the main line because it hasn't been used for 20 years and the trees have grown, and partly on the interurban. But the section that we're photographing was also good prairie. So once you take the trees out, you stand to get back to prairie. The next stop we made was at Cottonwood, where this construction is still underway. There's at that point the landscape was a little lower and needed draining, and the railroad bed was an embankment, so you come down to the road a little more than you do in some other places. The wetland is okay because it gives us a chance to do some wetland things too. Some of the corridor will be designated to different support groups like Champaign County Design and Conservation Foundation that's been involved, and Heartland Pathways may have a site there too, because we were mightily involved in the early initiation of this concept of a trail between Urbana and Danville using the Rabbit Act. When you get to Mount Olive Cemetery, there's another section road, and the cemetery is on the left, and the interurban is tucked on the right-hand side. The cemetery is kind of has a lot of history. Many of the settlers that came here are buried there. We'll be encountering the Fools elevators up the road, and the Fools family is buried in this cemetery. So there's history there. If we look at adjunct space to the trail, and if it can be done nicely, then the cemetery might be adjunct space for learning about the history of the area. In the distance, you can see Mayview. The trees in the distance are Mayview, and we look across there. Then we take a look longitudinally towards Falls Elevator, and you can see the gap in the trees for the rail. You can sense where the interurban corridor was. Usually the interurban is probably about 37 feet wide. The main line is about often 100 feet wide, sometimes not that wide. And then alongside is the road, which probably is best part of 100 feet wide also. Actually do a close-up so that you can see the Falls elevator in the distance. It's not a huge elevator, but it has put in a very large addition recently. Early on, Falls elevator was thinking of coming back and using the railroad to come in as a grain commodity short line into Urbana and then into Champaign, and make connections to perhaps going through on Norfolk Southern to other Norfolk Southern connections, or it could, if necessary, go on to what was the Illinois Central, now Canadian National. We move up the road a little. There's some question about what we should do with the elevator in terms of how do we communicate bicycles and elevators, because there are seasons at harvest time when that elevator is very busy. So how do you interface bicycles? And this is another piece of adjunct space which could be very interesting for people who don't know that much about elevatoring. And the elevator is quite friendly, so it might be that we can use it in that sense. On the east side of the elevator, there's an interurban. You see that area has not been plowed for crops, so it gives us a little bit of adjunct space. We walk along the railroad bed, and you can see in the distance Pioneer Grain, which is a corporation that brings in seed corn and processes it. And it's very near to St. Joe. That's very near the end of the line at the moment, 7 miles. It's cost probably over $3 million to do that, but it's a very good job. Some of the planting along the bed is beginning to show. There's black-eyed Susans are growing, and black-eyed Susans are fairly tough. They're almost on the weedy side, but they're there. And it makes a statement that there is prairie in there too. Some of it is remnant, some of it will be reconstruction prairie. At that point, my battery for the camera bugged out, so we'll put in a few photographs of a little road that runs down sideways off 150 and follows the railroad line. The railroad line went across the Salt Fork Creek at a node. The physics of meandering rivers is that you have sigmoid curves, and if you're on the outer part of this, the that landscape tends to move. You erode further, and gradually over 1,000 years the node moves south. But the node does less movement than everything else. So at one stage the railroad and the road and the interurban all went through to St. Joe, a little bit south of the rectilinear straight road which goes into St. Joe at the moment. That was a recent innovation. If you're in a rectilinear territory, you tend to want to have rectilinear things rather than something that goes off at a kitty corner, and it's different. But it's there, and it has nice prairie growing along it, and I'm very pleased to report that it has not been mown this year, and the plants are growing, and we have pictures of that. We hope we'll put one or two in so that you get an idea of that. The bridge is interesting. It is a prefabricated bridge, but it has a concrete surface, I think, and that bridges into St. Joe and crosses several streets in St. Joe. And I think this week the Forest Preserve, which controls the corridor, will be meeting out there to look at improvements that have been made in St. Joe, and perhaps even looking at the future of the next phase from St. Joe to Ogden or wherever it is. So I hope you think about it. I hope you enjoy it. You may need a bicycle that has more than a half-inch tire. You may need a modest hybrid, but and you can enjoy walking, and give it 10 years and the vegetation will come back too, and you'll have that to enjoy. And remember that there are roads off to the north and south. The Lincoln Trail runs along parallel, more or less, through Homer Lake, and that's worth investigating. Homer Lake is worth investigating. And to the north you have the Vermilion River coming in from the counties to the north that are north of Champaign County. They come through the corner of Champaign County. There's a lot of water there, and it goes down into the Wabash and eventually into Ohio and down Ohio to the Mississippi and to the Gulf. I unfortunately see on the internet some pictures of the prediction of the dead zone in the Gulf because of what we're putting into this Mississippi River, and it's that along with oil rigs that have misbehaved, and you have a pretty serious dead zone in the Gulf. Okay, that gives you an idea of one of our railbeds. It's the only one in east central Illinois that's of any length. We have lots of trails around town and things like that, but this is a longer one. And it's very different from doing this in a mountainous area or in a desert area where there's not much concern for the habitat on either side, but unfortunately our only native prairie, remnant prairie, that is on the railroad bed. So we are politicking for the next section to be not quite so wide. There are good reasons for it being wide. The whole event is encouraged by the railroaders who want to retain that railroad bed, and their transportation people and bicycle people are part of the transportation environment. So you can understand that a major issue is bicycles and wheelchairs and hiking and biking. And, it is hoped that another portion of the bed that has been somewhat approved in the Danville area includes a bridge which is a quarter-mile long and about 100 feet off the ground, and it covers the Vermilion River, and we hope that it will be restored as a bicycle pathway, which means it probably has to have a fence so people don't drop off of it. It will be probably the best part of a $2 million job once that is approved. Some of this sort of thing is dependent on state and federal funding that at this time is having some difficulties. But keep your eye on it. It's near to 150, so you don't have to go too far to see it. And think about the adjunct space that you might have. For instance, in Danville, you will be able to go north to the lake. You will have the railroad bed in that county is going to be is controlled by the Vermilion County Conservation District, and this has been a rather friendly thing. Dan Olson is the director of the Champaign County Forest Preserve District, and Ken Consis is the director of the Vermilion County Conservation District. And this is a cooperative venture which has in it the elements of a regional planning beyond just one county at a time. In fact, if we want to do these sorts of things, we have to think about regional planning that might include 8 counties, or even more than that if you want to include St. Louis and Chicago and people riding across the country. So the next thing I wanted to do is to remind you that it's coming up June and July are the times when prairie is at its peak as far as flowering is concerned. It's always a challenge for people to go to a prairie, as we do and or have done in the last few weeks. We go to the Barnhart Prairie, for instance, and you don't know what the plants are. It looks like there's biodiversity there, but it would be interesting to know what the plants are. You can put labels on plants, but then you come to the situation where you have a sign jungle, and it takes away from the nature of things. So what I want to do is perhaps go to Lake Park and walk you around Lake Park at this time of the year. One of the first flowers to come out that's interesting is a purple coneflower, and we've talked about it before. We planted it on a ditch which is a bypass for a lake. Lake Park is 75 housing unit subdivision, and is centered around the blockage of a creek to create a lake. The tributary of the Umbra, which was running off the backside of the Pisota Moraine, was dammed, and so tributaries, most of the water was taken through on a bypass. So we put in purple coneflower on that rather steep slope of the ditch that was the bypass. The Lake Park subdivision organized 6 groins in there, which helped to slow the water flow. So you have little waterfalls, and you have little riffle areas, and some quiet water there. So that's interesting to us because it allows us to have some wetland species. The coneflowers are interesting because they have like 4 feet deep roots, and one of the problems with that ditch was that you couldn't get anything to grow on it. It was a shallow-rooted cultivated plant like brome grass or fescues. The bank would erode. So we worked with Dick Burwash, who was one of the developers, and planted plants which wouldn't grow immediately. You don't get a 15-foot root on a compass plant or a 10-foot root on a dock quickly. But in the long run, this all the fibrous roots and the tap roots make it possible to hold that soil together. The real problem is that on a heavy storm, say you get 5 inches of rain, most of the area that's feeding into this tributary of the Umbra River is developed. So it's running off roofs and running off pavement, and so what's coming down to that ditch is much more potential for erosion than it would have been in nature or would even be in farmland. So we constantly watch it, and so you can see the coneflowers growing there. They're kind of wimpy. They're not the commercial style. Their petals hang down, and they're not a shrubbery style plant. They're single, but they're in clumps. And sometimes a plant will have 2 or 3 flowers, but not a lot. You have to get your enjoyment out of a native species which hasn't been developed for commercial purposes. So that plant is growing now, and very shortly, once it's been pollinated, and then the seed head will be there, and you can recognize the seed head. It's fairly firm. If you pick it, you'll get prickles in your fingers. You have to know that underneath that stem there are roots that are holding things together. You will encounter little blue stem growing, and little blue stem is a real diplomat. It doesn't grow tall. It grows about 2 feet high, but it has perhaps a mile of rootlets. There's switchgrass, there's big blue stem, there's Indian grass. These are the 6 grasses. There's cordgrass in the ditch. So these are the grasses that help to keep the sides of the bank together, and they grow fairly quickly. It's fairly easy to establish a grass prairie. So we do have grasses there, but been careful not to plant too many grasses, because if you do that, then you deny the broadleaves from coming in. And this week, the broadleaves are saying things to the world too. The anemone is on the side of the bank in a big plot. We brought it in from Ludlow on the railroad bed on the way to Chicago, and it is increased 100-fold, and there's a bank of white flowers. It's an anemone, and it's really pleasing to see the plants coming through. And I think anyone that works with prairie is happy to see some of the plants that they've planted, perhaps 5 and 10 years ago, starting to express themselves. So there's Culver's root there. It's not quite in bloom yet, but you can see its palmate leaves. Palmate just means it's like a palm, and so it has perhaps 5 walls of leaves, and then it will eventually have a candelabra of white flowers. And in these hot days, you will see it droop a little bit, but prairie plants know what a drought is. They know how to survive it. They've got deep roots. They've got survival mechanisms. So even though they droop a little, they will survive. Whereas the cultivated plants, corn included, get rather downtrodden in a drought. Their leaves start to roll over. It's a mechanism to try and stop the loss of moisture in their leaves. So there's Culver's root, and there's rosinweed at the moment. Is it's related to there's a sulfium that's related to dock and compass plant and cup plant, and it's rather bushy, and it's got opposite leaves, and it's rosinous. But if you injure the plant at all, it will bleed some rosin. The day of hyacinths has gone. Most of the liliaceous plants come early in the spring, and if you want to gather seed, you have to get them now, but you have to be very clever to have put in some sort of indication as to where they are, or you won't find them. This golden Alexander is now in seed. It is also a diplomat. It belongs to the carrot family, or the umbelliferae family. Umbrellas on top of umbrellas, and it's related to some of the weedy creatures like hemlock and parsnip, but it flowers profusely with a yellow bloom early in the spring, and now is ready to seed. Little things like starry-eyed grass have long since lost out to a visual corridor, but if you're lucky, you can get down on your knees and find the seed where they are. It pays you to have gone and collected or noted where the areas are, because once the petals are gone, you won't find the starry-eyed grass easily. There are some weeds there, and right now, yellow sweet clover and white sweet clover are raising their ugly head. They're good hay crops, but they're not a part of the prairie. But they often get planted along roadsides because it's felt that they're a legume and they provide nitrogen that's a living nitrogen rather than you having to apply it to the soil. So even though it is not encouraged on the roadsides from a prairie point of view, it is encouraged from a point of view that you can mow it and it survives. And we spend a lot of time pulling out sweet clover. You wait for a rain like we had last night, and then you get your shoulders in action. You bury your hands down low so that you'll get 5 shoots that come out. It's about 4 feet high, and then you pull hard, and if you're lucky, you'll get the roots, and the roots are loaded with rhizobacteria, and they're interesting, and we hate to pull them up really, but as far as prairie preservation is concerned, they're not a part of the act. They're European introduction, mainly for fodder for cattle. There are liatris, and liatris can do very well, and sometimes are used as a diplomat because they have a straight plume, and when you have them in profusion, if you have 200 or 300 liatris, then you will have a purple haze that's rather interesting and exciting and surprising to people. You can get other plants in there too that say something early on, and black-eyed Susan is one of those. We don't always encourage it because it's fairly, well, it's a hardy plant, and it does well. It gives color, but it also takes over, so we are cautious about black-eyed Susan. You also have to face the fact that when there's some disturbance of the soil, you're going to get ragweed, or horseweed is another name for it. And if you're in good prairie soil, which is Lake Park has good prairie soil, then that ragweed over the season can grow an inch in diameter, and it can be 8 or so feet tall. And it has 1 million seeds, so you make a store of seeds in the soil if you let it seed. So one of the talents we have to have at this time of the year is to remove plants like ragweed before they seed. They're also a little ugly if people know that they're weeds and your prairie has these weeds, then that's not a positive event. This week I did go to a prairie residential building that is very close to this prairie, and they have about 2 acres of vacant space, and they've not been expanding that. It's a rental place for people who are over 55, and it's one floor, so people can move around, and you can park your car there. You can have an apartment that is in a place which is interesting, and you have camaraderie. And it's also, people have their dogs, and also they walk on the prairie, so we know that because there's little trails into the prairie that is just next door. We have things like milkweed. There are various types of milkweed. One of them is a swamp milkweed. It lives in that drainage ditch and is rather nice at this time of the year. You can look for that. Start looking at 1 or 2 species, and then you'll find there's insects that are on. So there's children getting excited about the chrysalis of the monarch butterfly that's associated with milkweed, that the larval stage or the caterpillar can use. So walk the prairie at this time of the year. Lake Park has been very generous. It's an area that is publicly accessible, so Lake Park is near to Winfield Village, and another housing settlement on the corner of Curtis and First Street that's called The Place. It used to be called University Apartments. But this is close enough to town. It's on a bus route. You can go down First Street and just enjoy a prairie and walk around it. And you need to do that many times.
Can you tell people some simple directions to get there? The bus route, would that be the yellow bus?
Yes.
Okay, so if you take and of course the yellow bus does some odd things. So sometimes the yellow bus will go near it. Sometimes the yellow bus will go way the heck away from it.
Yes, it's not awfully near you.
So
some of it goes through Winfield Village, so Lake Park and Winfield Village can use the bus. But sometimes the bus goes down by Walmart, and it goes north somewhere near to Burwash Drive, and you can hail it. Sometimes in a busy time it takes the whole route, sometimes it takes a short route.
Right. And what's the name of the complex that's right there by Lake Park? The housing, the apartments?
Okay, one is Winfield Village.
Okay.
And it abuts to the west side of the Lake Park. It's a 2.5 acre site. The Prairie Fields, I think it is, a housing settlement is to the north, and also the place is to the north. So the location is near to the corner of First and Curtis Road, but you have to find your way in there. It's not right on the corner, but you can get to it through Winfield Village if you go to the east side of Winfield Village, or you can stop on First Street about 200 yards, probably 500 yards south of Curtis Road, and you'll find a lawn area, which used to be a sanitary treatment plant, which got to be too small for the development. So now the sanitary is taken to the Southwest treatment plant, and that area was, the sanitary treatment plant was taken down. But you can walk across that lawn and get into the prairie that way. And if you stand on, there's a berm. When buildings are put in, construction people do not like the softness of a topsoil, so they usually remove the topsoil so that they can work with clay, which is more firm. And the Lake Park and Dick Burwash and others have made an arrangement to have a berm that's on the north side of the Lake Park, and that is where you can get up high and you can look to the Yankee Ridge in the east. You can see the ditch of the Omba River. You can see that it's a little younger than the rest of the prairie, so you can look over the prairie. And it's rather nice to have that there. So you have a little bit of terrain that you wouldn't have otherwise. Okay, well, let's remind ourselves that this is the Prairie Monk, and I'm Dave Monk, and you can find some of these discussions, sometimes repeated, but it doesn't hurt. We repeat in a slightly different way, and we do include pictures, so you can go to Banner Public Television, for whom we really appreciate this opportunity. I took the camera we're using today to St. Joe last night and took pictures that I hope you might see. And we talk about other environmental issues from time to time. This week, for instance, the Sierra Club met. And Sierra Club is was visiting the aquifer simulation. It's in an old Sears building, and we'll have the person who's in charge of that on board sometime, because they've been using cardboard and brown paper to simulate the geological structures, and they have used plastic bottles welded together to represent the water, and in amongst it are circles of cardboard from the tubes that go through carpets and things like that. So they're representing gravel, and there's discussion of where you are on this aquifer. They've tried to be very accurate, and so different children that have been putting this together get to realize that this is for real. Their house is actually over an aquifer. What does the aquifer look like under their house? And so they become a little protective of their aquifer. And if they're in a banner, then the old landfill is leaching heavy metals, which are not awfully friendly. And so where is the leaching occurring here? And do we have just one aquifer, or do we have two aquifers? How did glaciation fill in the water-worn landscape, and did you have various glaciers that came and then as the world warmed and didn't warm over many years? How was it put down? This is called stratigraphy. And if you have a stratigrapher, he can help you out, or she can help you out. And so that the middle school people who have been putting this event together have been learning from people who are geologists as to what's going on here. Where does the water come from that is going to run into this? Can it fall into the aquifer? One big question at the moment is that the people who produce seed corn are being encouraged to take water out of the aquifer for irrigation. And it's rather cruel to the aquifer. When the aquifer gently used to move from East Champaign County and Vermilion County across underneath Champaign, it's called the Mahomet Aquifer, through Mahomet, and eventually through Fisher and over to Beardstown. How long does it take water to filter into those aquifers? And if you take out a lot of water, you end up with a funnel. So in Champaign, where we take out a lot of water, there is a cone where the water used to flow through. Now the water flows in from one side of the cone and the other side of the cone as a result of a lot of water. And so you are encouraged to think about how often you shower and how much water you use. Do you use a bath, or do you use a shower? And there's all sorts of ways where you can think about preserving the dignity of water. I have a faucet at the moment that's dripping. That means that I have to get out and take the faucet out and put a new, what would you call
A washer or
a washer is the word in it, and you can use a lot of water that way. Well, irrigation is a problem, and irrigation can be high in the air, and in which case a lot of the water goes into the air. It can also be in the ground. If you're in irrigation areas, often you let water into troughs, and it will run through the nursery or the orchard or the farmland that you want. Sometimes you can flood. If you have rice, you can flood a whole field. Whatever you do, you are taking out a huge amount of water. And in order to do that, you have circular pivots, and those pivots take a lot of water out of the ground. You virtually have the equivalent of a 8-cylinder motor working day and night to provide that irrigation. But you have to think that this is not a sustainable thing. The water that goes in is far less than the water that comes out. And if you do this too much, then you end up in the problem of the Ogallala aquifer in Nebraska and places like that, where the aquifer is actually dried up. And the same sort of thing is happening in California. So this teaching aid that's on, it's just in Champaign, where the old Sears building was, is a very good teaching site. And you can discuss those sorts of things, and people go away. And sometimes, believe it or not, the children teach their parents about things. It's often you hear of children teaching grandma and mother and father how to do recycling, and they didn't have to do it. And so it's interesting that young folk can actually change things. David had an interesting one this week. He thought we might have the Blue Stem Band in, and I was thinking that was rather nice, because Blue Stem is in flower at the moment. It has huge anthers hanging out to the wind. The grasses are wind pollinated, and when you're in a little bit later, it's early at the moment, but still big blue stem especially is flowering at the moment, you can see the wind rustle across a field, and there's a certain feeling about that makes a prairie rather interesting if you can see the wind patterns. You don't get that from the broadleaves, which are often smaller, but the broadleaves are a totally different cat. And I was wondering if we had a nanotechnologist to put a microphone that's small enough to almost be an anther and sense the wind. And what sort of wind? Do you have fast 80-mile-an-hour wind, or do you have gentle winds? So what is the pattern? When you're in an ecosystem that doesn't have dramatic mountains and dramatic rivers and geological circumstances that are dramatic, then you start to look for the little pieces that make it interesting. Like I've been watching this week of Baptisia, which is another of those plants that you can find on Lake Park at the present time. It's a legume, and it came out in bloom this last week, and already the pea pods are forming. And just to watch the pea pod and its color and its anthers, and to watch a whole stem, a spike of flowers, and the young ones are at the top, and the older ones are down lower, and then you get the insects that might be there. and the bumblebee from time to time. They're all there, and then you have to talk to people too, because we have some of our plants poke their nose through a fence line, and it's very tempting for people to manage next door neighbor land and put a glyphosate like Roundup on the leaf of a plant. And so I have some roses that have been treated with a systemic herbicide, and of course the roots through the plant gets herbicided too. So once again, you have to talk to people and beg them. This is not like cutting off a piece of the rose bush. This is like killing it. And this week there was a discussion of glyphosates that are ineffective anymore because they've been used too extensively. So there's a thing called pigweed, and there's a few other plants that the Roundup is not working with. So then there's another few herbicides which happen to be fairly scungy. So do you use them? How do you use them? One of them happens to be quite spread by wind. So if you spray it in more than, say, 15-mile-an-hour wind, and you can check that. You lick your finger and you put your finger in the air, and you can, if you have any experience, you can get an idea what a 15-mile-an-hour wind is. Then your next door neighbor may get to be sprayed too. Onward, you have to be watchful. Some of the people that are doing agriculture are going beyond the corn and soybean and wheat. Wheat's important. Wheat is almost ready to harvest now, so you'll see fields coming out, wheat and barley. Growing vegetables has to be something you think about. For instance, if you have root crops, then root crops like to be able to expand. A beet or a carrot or a potato needs room to expand. And if you have a rich, deep Drummer and Flanagan soil, it may not have the same capacity to expand as if it was on a zinnia or a slightly drier soil that was more gravelly and the plant was able to expand. We don't have a lot of that problem, but certainly you have to think about it. You have to think about variety. I talked to Carrie, has a farm south of town, and they have fruit trees. And one of the fruit trees they have is a pawpaw. This is not the tropical pawpaw. This is picking up pawpaws, put them in your pocket pawpaws. This is a tropical plant that has moved north. It is it's tropical. You can see that its leaves have drip tips, and it goes into fall very early in the season. But it has this rather wonderful, about 3-inch long pod with very big brown seeds in it. But it tastes just like a custard apple, which is a tropical plant. So it has it's a sort of an escapee from the tropics, and probably as climate changes it will go further north. It's almost a shrub. Ruth Walker has a house with a whole slug of them. You let them fall on the ground, and so one of the problems is when you grow specialized fruit trees, you have a local market. Pawpaws don't travel very well. If you're going to put them in a plane and send them to Los Angeles, they're not going to go very well. So that means that these are specialty crops, and there are quite a few of them, and it's fun. If you go to the master gardeners, you'll start to realize that there are a lot of different things to eat. Sometimes you can put in flavorings like ginger. We have wild ginger in the little pocket prairie, but I just went to Strawberry Fields the other day and bought some ginger beer. And so you have to think about ginger, what's ginger? So we used to have ginger, and ginger, we had a bottle that was fed with ginger, and it was a yeast, I assume, and then we would create ginger beer, and we'd put it in bottles, and it would mellow, but it also produced some CO2, I guess it was, and all of a sudden, then we have boom, yes, and this would be all over the pantry. So at that stage, we started to drink ginger beer. So I was reminiscing. The time goes very fast. So there are some memories in these sorts of things. If you grew up with potatoes, you remember potatoes. You remember how to dig them, how to use them. If you grew up with yams, you did with yams. If you grew up with peppers, then you have peppers in your soul. And if you have jalapenos, then you may have even encouraged more sensitive parts of your tongue that recognizes them. It seems like people who don't have quite so many taste buds in certain places might be not quite so receptive of the heat that goes with a jalapeno. So you just keep thinking and keep dreaming about things that happen in the world that's around you, and it's very, very interesting. Just watching the thistles at this time is interesting. Canada thistle is almost ready to spread its seed everywhere. And so help me, it won't be mown until August the 1st, and then if it's on the roadside, it will be spread everywhere. So just think about that environment as you go and watch it, and watch the compass plant grow. It's now, I've got a little compass plant outside, and it's about 4 feet tall already and doing its thing. So this is Dave Monk, the Prairie Monk, WEFT Champaign 90.1 on your FM dial.
And Dave on the board.